creativity is deployed far too narrowly. That's probably my great beef, which is that essentially decisions get taken by highly rational people on the basis of, rational sequential logic. And then at the very last moment, they'll deploy it to, they'll add a few creative people to add a few little bells and whistles to a framework that's already been designed. And I think in many cases, this is the wrong way round. And the very simple way, if you want me to sum it up in a sentence, I think there are far more great ideas out there that can be post-rationalized than there are great ideas that can be pre-rationalized. And if we confine ourselves only trying those things which make sense in advance, we're limiting the solution space massively.
No, that's really interesting and very well put. And I guess this is a complex question to answer, but I guess how do you think that creative thought process ended up getting siloed so much to just like, oh, that's an advertising function, rather than, as you say, something which would have huge value being applied more broadly?
I mean, we're partly guilty ourselves. If you look at the history of the ad agency, it made its money really through commission. And so it has still a muscle memory, which is if we're not using any bought media, we're not really making any money. And even though we haven't been paid on commission since 1989 or so, I still see that heavy kind of influence of the old days of commission. So we have a natural instinct to leap to communication solutions rather than broader creative solutions. So that's part of it. I think we're partly to blame. We spent our time obsessing about the marketing director and obsessing about Marcoms when actually there were far wider problems which a creative approach could have solved, I think. And at the very least, I mean, there are a few characteristics, I think, of creative problem solving, one of which is that it doesn't require, it does its working out later rather than beforehand. In other words, it accepts the idea of a creative leap, that you can, through bizarre means, arrive at a possible solution which you can only explain in retrospect. That's what I call Red Bull. No one would have come up with it in advance. Okay, no one would have said, if we want to compete with Coke, we need an expensive drink that comes in a tiny can and tastes kind of horrible. Okay, there are things out there which we can only explain by post-rationalization.
Yeah.
And the creative approach accepts that. The other interesting thing I noticed with the creative approach is that in a complex system environment, and you can actually prove this if you're involved in complexity science, the opposite of a good idea can be another good idea. And so we're also used to a problem-solving environment where there isn't a single right optimal idea, where in many cases what is a good idea, of course, depends on what your competitors are doing, because differentiation is necessary. And where, to be honest, there's more than one good idea out there. And in many cases, the right answer might be the opposite of another right answer. And so I noticed with creative people that where business people and rational people always shy away from contradiction, the creative person runs towards it. So that, the standard thing, if you like, in a non-creative world would be to say that Guinness takes a bloody long time to pour, that Stella Artois is ridiculously expensive, and that the trouble with Avis is it's number 2 to Hertz. Okay. And you'd say, my God, well, okay, those are our weak spots. We need to bury those really quickly and get people to ignore them. And the creative person says, no. Because in psychology, you can actually turn lead into gold. You can turn a weakness into a strength. And from that, you get reassuringly expensive for Stella Artois. You get good things come to those who wait for Guinness. And you get, we're number 2, so we try harder for Avis. And I think there's something there, which is that the natural creative mind is deeply annoying to the highly rationalist mind, because you're always looking in places and talking about things which to the rational sequential mind seems deeply irrelevant or, to be honest, counterproductive or counterintuitive. But that's the whole point. With Red Bull, it tastes disgusting, comes in a tiny can and it costs a fortune. Those are all terrible things in a drink, but they're brilliant things in a drug. If you flip the context, the same thing that you always thought of was a weakness can actually become a strength.